Welcome to Wadsworth on Film, a program presented by the Wadsworth Area Historical Society and designed to record the oral history of Wadsworth. We have a very special guest today. We have Paul Good and his daughter Lucy Good-Rich. And Paul Good has been around Wadsworth for a long, long time. How many years have you been around Wadsworth, Mr. Good?
93 years.
93 years, almost 94, isn't it?
Yeah.
Tell us when you were born.
September 30, 1904.
September 30th, 1904.
Yeah.
Now then, you were born where? Right here in Wadsworth?
No, I was born in Montville Township,
Montville
Medina
Township.
County, Ohio.
Mm-hmm. Well, you know, at one time, all of that area was farmland. I mean, this is all farmland here then as well. Now, there are a lot of goods in Wadsworth.
Yeah.
Could you tell us what family of goods you belong to and then who the other goods were? For instance, Bill Good and all of those other people. Your father and mother were who?
My father was Jacob B. Good.
Jacob Good.
And mother was Sarah Stolfer.
Sarah Stauffer.
Yeah.
Related to the Stauffers and Sharon?
Yes.
They're related. Somehow are they related to the Stauffers and Sharon?
Her and Elno were first cousins.
Elno was who was the old?
No, Elno would have been her. Well, it was her brother's boy. That would have been her her nephew.
Her nephew. Yeah. Elno was her nephew. I see. Now she was a Stauffer then. Yeah. So the Good and the Stauffers got together. And then you are one of the members of that Good family of Jacob Good. Are you the oldest?
Yes.
And who are the other siblings?
Merle, he was born 1906.
1906.
Ford was born in 1909.
Ford Good.
And Doris was born in 1910 and died in infancy. And Lois Good was born in 1918, and Ruby Good Strand, and her husband is a big contractor in Seattle, Washington.
I see. So they...
And Dave was... She was born in 1922.
1922. So you go from 1904 to 1922, or 18 years of childbearing there.
Yeah.
Mountville Township is northwest of Wadsworth.
Right.
Could you tell us geographically where it was that you were born? Now, right now, it might be a house, but 10 or 15 years from now, it might be a housing development. So tell us where you were born. Tell us the geography, the road that you were...
Montville Township was on the South Township line. A grandfather who was a ordained minister for the Old Order Mennonite Church. And he preached in that church for 46 years.
Your grandfather?
Yeah. And his wife... They bought 40 acres on the Guilford-Montville Township line road.
Where is that today? What is the name of that road today? There's a Good road up there. Is it named for you?
No, there's Guilford Road, and south of it is Good Road, isn't it?
That's right, on the northwest corner.
On the Good Road. Now,
Good Road and Guilford Road on the northwest corner.
On the northwest corner. Now, was Good Road named for your family?
Yes.
And they lived there, obviously, and that's why it was named for the family.
My father and I were born in the same room.
Your father and you were born in the same room. Right. Do you remember what year your father was born?
1875.
1875, and he was born there. That means that your grandfather was also there.
Yeah.
When did your grandfather come to Mountville Township?
I can't tell you. Do you know?
Yeah, in 1841.
1841.
He was born that year.
He was born that year.
Yeah.
And was he born there, Lucy?
He was born in Pennsylvania.
Born in Pennsylvania, then he came this way.
Ohio. Yes.
Now, I heard you say that your grandfather was a Mennonite minister.
Right.
Now, were you a Mennonite as a boy then?
No.
You were always...
I never met my grandma Good because Father didn't find a girl in the Mennonite church. And he worked for many men with the idea that he would become the son-in-law. And that never worked out. So after his wife died, he married in the Stauffer family. And my grandmother was known to have said that only the Mennonite people will be in heaven. There won't be any room for the rest of them.
Won't be any room for the rest of them.
I don't know.
Well, now the Stauffers were what, Lutheran?
No, they belonged to the old Reformed Church.
Reformed Church, and then that's what you accepted
My
then.
brother, that was Merle, that was born right next to me, March 6, 1906.
1906. He was also of that church?
Yes.
Right.
And he and I joined, that's what I wanted to say. He and I joined the present United Church of Christ in Wadsworth on High Street on Pentecost Day of 1916.
1916, wow.
So
That's
I've been
81 years ago.
So I've been a member of that church 16 from
82.
That's 82, well,
It was
82 years ago now,
82,
yes.
Yeah, right.
82 years ago.
and he died. My brother died in April of, when was that?
When Merle died, he died in June in 1956.
1956 in June.
That's right.
My father and Merle died the same year.
I
and
see.
our oldest daughter was married that year.
Your oldest daughter was married that year.
Yeah.
And who was your oldest daughter?
Jean.
Jean.
She lives in Iowa, and they have one granddaughter. They have one granddaughter and 4 grandsons.
Now, whom did Jean marry? What was her husband's name?
What's his first name?
Richard Tanner.
Richard Tanner.
Richard Tanner.
Now, what year was Jean born?
1931.
1931, so she's 67 years old now.
Yeah.
And then was Lucy the next one?
Yeah.
Lucy was the next one.
in 35.
Lucy, born in 35, so you're
And
62 years old.
Dale was born in 37.
So he
And
is
Carolyn,
61.
our youngest daughter, was born in 43, and she graduated from Highland High School in Sharon and graduated from Ohio State University, and she served 5 years with the United Church of Christ Mission Board in Turkey.
In Turkey. And where is she now, Mr. Good?
She is married, and they have one little girl, and they 3 live in Denver, Colorado.
Now, you joined the United, what we used to call the Reformed Church, the United Church of Christ. You joined that in 1916, correct?
Right.
Now, what was it like at that time? Who was the minister, and who were some of the old people who were in the church at the time? You were a young person then, weren't you?
Well, now, 4 from 16, I was 12.
Yes. That's pretty
Well,
young.
Reverend George T.N. Beam was the minister.
George T.M.
No,
Bean.
T.N.
T.N. Bean.
Yeah.
B-E-A-N?
Right,
Right, was the minister.
yeah.
And do you remember his wife's name?
No, I can't
Okay,
tell.
that's good enough. And who were some of the old-time members? You know, people, little kids look up to
William Markman,
the old... William Markman.
Artman,
Artman.
A-R-T-M-A-N.
Artman.
And man by the name of Hartzell.
Which Hartzell would it be? Leslie?
No, it was Leslie's father.
Leslie's father. Okay, so
can't
we're
say-
going way back, aren't we?
Well, they were the elders in the day that my brother and I joined church.
They were the
And
eldest.
Dave Huntsberger,
David Huntsberger was not related to Willard Huntsberger, was he?
I wouldn't know.
Okay.
He taught us boys at Sunday school, and Sunday after he rode a train that went 60 miles an hour. He described that to us.
And how did he describe it to you? What did he say that happened?
Well, it was a big day in history.
That it went
when
60 miles an hour?
There was a train on Earth that moved a mile a minute.
A mile a minute. Now the kids who have these very powerful cars want to do that in 8 seconds, go from 0 to 60 miles an hour in 8 seconds. That's a little bit fast, but at that time that was very, very fast. Then you and your brother joined the church. What about your parents? Did they join the church then at
Well,
that
they
time?
were members. See, Father waited till his mother died, and then he married my mother, which wasn't in the Mennonite church.
Right.
She was Reformed church.
She was the Reformed church, and they weren't permitted, the Mennonites did not marry outside the church. Is that correct?
No, they didn't. They wasn't allowed. But they left the church when they married that church,
I see.
outside the church.
So you never had any association with the Mennonite church?
No, only in business. There were a lot of them farmers.
Farmers. Now,
We baled hay and straw for hay buyer Don Crawford in Seville. So we worked for a lot of the Mennonite people.
a lot of Mennonite
They're
people.
nice, honest, honorable.
they're great, great,
they're
wonderful
nice,
people. Our best
honorable, honest, upright people.
They are indeed that. Now, you had a brother, Ford Good.
Yeah.
He did something very special in Wadsworth and in this whole community. What was that?
He was an auctioneer.
Auctioneer. Were you ever an auctioneer?
No,
Did you ever want to be?
no.
No. How did Ford become an auctioneer, and where did he learn his trade?
Well, when he was a little kid, he went to a sale, and the auctioneer, Gene Tinsman, used to call for a nickel out 5, and Ford come home and he'd rattle that off while he was doing chores when he was only 6, 7, 8 years old.
No kidding.
Yeah.
And he would rattle off what the auctioneers would rattle off. That's
yeah.
it. Then how long was he an auctioneer, and who were some of the other auctioneers of the Good family?
Well, Uncle Will, that's Dad's brother that
Bill
lived
Good.
in Wadsworth, he was an auctioneer.
And Uncle Will's had another.
Yes, he started from the farm where we was born, and he come to Wadsworth as a young man and started to hang paper.
That's right.
And he was really one of the fathers of Wadsworth.
Bill Good.
Yeah,
Right.
he had almost died of headaches. And the story is told that he used to set up the table and roll out the paper for the room that they was going to paper in the morning. And his customer, the man's wife, helped him cut the paper and lay it on the board. So when they got it all done, he says, Uncle Will said to the lady, he says, if you would paste a few of them, I'd put the outside border on the room, so that would be on in the morning when I'd come to start. And it ended up that long towards midnight, or maybe a little bit after, they had the whole room done.
The whole thing. And those were the big rooms with the high ceilings and all of that.
Yeah.
And they didn't have the nifty kinds of pastes that they have now. It was wheat paste, was it not?
I suppose so.
It was wheat paste. Now,
But Uncle Will and most of the Good family were miracles in what they undertook.
is that right? That's a good way of putting it, too. Now, Uncle Will was a small man, wasn't he?
Yeah,
With a high-pitched voice. But Uncle Ford, or rather, your brother Ford, was a bigger man, was he not?
I wouldn't.
Taller.
Taller.
A little taller,
Taller,
a little
yes.
taller.
And he had a lower voice, as I remember. Is that correct?
I don't, yeah, it might be.
Yeah, much on a lower voice. But they didn't have microphones.
He won the State Auctioneers Association contest at the Ohio State Fair once.
One year, I remember when they were talking about that. Now, they didn't have microphones as they do today, do they?
No,
They had to do it all by themselves, and they had powerful voices, and they really could ring these things out. Now, As you boys grew up, I mean, you and your brothers and so forth, you went one way and became a farmer, and he was also a farmer, was he not?
Ford graduated in 1929 from high school, and I graduated in 1924. So when he came out of high school, Dad told him, you'd better get a job because there isn't work enough on the farm and produce enough that we can hire you. And Ford tried to find a job, but not very hard, I don't think.
Yeah.
And he said, well, find work to do. And that's when we found Mr. Crawford, the hay buyer. So we bought a stationary hay baler, and we baled hay for the farmers. And
Now,
we baled hay for this man Crawford, and then he carved a railroad car that held 25 ton of baled hay, and the bales averaged 100 pound, tied with 3 wires. And that was a success to the place where Mr. Crawford called Dad up one time and asked him, but that oldest son of yours, I don't know his name, but he moves so fast, he don't walk anywhere. If he wants a wrench or something, he runs. Would you have him car me a load of hay Monday? Well, he told him, Mr. Crawford, he says, I'd have to ask him. But he says, Don, he says, I'll tell you what we'll do. You know that we run a baler, and if you let us bale the hay, we'll car the hay also.
explain to us what car means. I know what it means, but...
A railroad car
Right, railroad car.
held 25 ton of hay.
25 tons of hay. So you're
You
talking
was,
about...
You was a tired man when you had it full and had the tags in the doorway, all that you could read the weight on.
That's right. And there are 20 bales to a ton, right?
No, about 18.
About 18?
Yeah.
About 18 bales to a ton. So you can do the math and you can figure out how many bales of hay. Tell us, Mr. Good, what a stationary baler is. Those things don't exist anymore. Well, they might exist, but we don't see them very often. Tell us
Well,
what they
we had
were.
an old Eli baler that was secondhand, but then that wasn't good enough. It was different and old, and mostly wore out. So we bought a new Ohio baler made by the Ohio Cultivator Company in Bellevue, Ohio. And I don't know, we might have baled 10,000 ton with that baler.
10,000 tons. Now, what did it look like and what ran it?
We had to have a steam or a tractor engine.
You have to have and the tractor engine was...
Build it up to the baler.
It was...
And you parked the baler in the barn floor and baled the hay in the mile right side of it. We wasn't in business long until we had a 2238 McCormick Deering thrasher. And so they used to thrash the straw in a stack and then get it baled, and the thing was that to get choice chicken straw that didn't get wet or had any mold in. That was pretty an impossibility. So Father and my brother and I, we were all, the goods, just like Uncle Will, come to Wadsworth and hung paper and made a business out of it. W.L. Good Wallpaper and Art Store had a big white brick building right west of the square in Wadsworth on the north side. The building doesn't exist anymore.
Doesn't exist anymore. Well,
It had his name in a block of concrete 4 by 6 feet on front.
And that was a furniture store at one time then too, wasn't it?
Yes, that went from furniture, and he ended up being one of the popular undertakers of this section of Ohio. He had...
And what was the name of the undertaker's place?
Opplinger and Good.
Opplinger and Good.
Yeah.
Which Opplinger was this?
I can't tell you.
Okay.
But they, Uncle Will buried 18 pregnant mothers in 1918 in the flu.
He buried 18 pregnant mothers in 1918 from the flu.
Yeah.
What was the name? What did we call the flu that year? You know, every year it has a different name. What was the name that they gave it that year? Was it called the Spanish flu?
I don't remember.
Influenza, I think.
Influenza.
Influenza, yeah.
Influenza.
I remember when it was that people took sick and died.
They
all
died.
over.
It was very, very disastrous, the big
Oh, yeah.
flu epidemic in 1918. But now this is Uncle Will, who had the wallpaper first, then he had a furniture store and a
undertaking
mortuary,
business.
undertaking business there.
And he had auctions.
And he was an
lots of
auctioneer, so he did a lot of things. He
Yeah.
did a lot of things. Now,
And his son Donald come along, and I don't think he helped with the funeral, but he never took the training to become an undertaker.
now tell us what Uncle Don, or his son Donald did, and how great
I don't know.
became.
He married, and
He married Kathleen Good. I'm Kathleen Kaler.
yeah, they moved to.
Kohler.
I think they moved to Florida.
No,
So
they lived here in Wadsworth for many years on
Oh.
Woodland Avenue. But what did he do for a living?
I can't tell you.
Don Good was with Sterling, Linder, and Davis.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, he was the vice president there for Sterling, Linder, and Davis, and then that became Polsky's and so forth. And Don Good and Kathleen had one son, Bob.
Yeah.
Now, he was Bill Good's son, correct?
Right.
And Bill Good was your uncle.
Right.
So Don Good was your cousin, is that
Right,
correct? That's
right.
good, right. Now, tell us a little bit about your mother and her family, the Stoffers. We got the fact that they they did give you a religion, because the Stoffers were, but Elno Stoffer was her, what, father?
No, her
Brother.
her brother Charles Stauffer was Elno's father.
Your mother's
Brother
brother,
Charles.
was Elno's father.
Brother, yeah.
So Elno was your mother's cousin.
Right.
That's right. Now,
And he had a big idea. He had a big store with everything in it at Paxton, Ohio. The ceiling hung full of everything. And he had a stick with a hook on that he could get it down and show the customers. And
Right.
He was really a wonderful salesman.
salesperson. Then he came to Sharon Center, and they have the Stoffers Hardware up there. Is that correct?
Yeah, and didn't he run for county commissioner one year? I'm not sure.
Yes, he
he
did.
was on the fair board, too.
And he
He was on the fair board
He
for
was
many
popular.
years.
He was on the fair board.
He was everything.
Yeah.
And his son, or grandson, I should say, who is now, what's his first name?
David.
David, yeah.
David.
David is very, very powerful, popular as well. We're going to give you a couple minutes of rest, and I'll go to Lucy for a couple seconds to find out some other things, okay?
Okay.
Give you a little bit of a rest. Lucy, tell us a little bit about brothers and sisters and where they are and whom they married and all of that.
Okay, my older sister Jean married Richard Tanner. We talked about that earlier. In 1956, she moved out there in 55, had attended Heidelberg College and taught 2 years in Elyria
Right.
schools.
She moved out where? We didn't say
Out
where.
to Cedar Rapids,
Cedar Rapids, Iowa.
Rapids, Iowa. At
Okay.
the time, my mom's sister, Lola Swinehart, and family moved out there first, so that was an adventure, like, let's go find out what it's like. And the Elyria people said, well, wait 2 years, or, teach 2 years, and then come. That's how she met her husband the year after that. And they were married in 1956, and they have 5 children. And I graduated from Highland in 1953, which was the first class of Highland. And I attended Heidelberg for 3 semesters and 1 quarter at Kent. I had health problems at the time, that's why I stopped. Then my brother Dale.
Tell us whom you married.
I married Edmund Rich in June of 1958, so it's 40 years this year. And we have 1 son, Peter, who is an auditor for the Department of Interior in Arlington, Virginia.
And your mother-in-law is Margaret Rich,
Margaret Rich, that's
who
right.
is the last living figment of my childhood. I grew up with Margaret Rich, and she is my neighbor right now. One of the the finest people in this Worth has ever known, as far as I'm concerned. And she is the only person who is left of my entire childhood. The only person left. My own brother is dead, and Margaret is my next door neighbor, and I want her to live forever. Of course, but none of us will, but I want her to live forever for that reason. I tried to get her on this program because she has a phenomenal amount of history as well, but she won't come. Maybe you can convince her to come, Lucy.
Well, maybe after she sees this, it might happen.
It might happen. I would hope so. Then from Lucy to the next one.
Yeah, my brother Dale.
Mm-hmm. And he married
Janice Venner.
And the Venner family is, you've known the Venner family for years and years, haven't you?
Right.
Did you know Dick Venner here?
He was in my Sunday school class when I got out of high school. I taught a Sunday school class in the old Reformed Church from 24 to 44, from 12 to 20.
And Dick, who was it?
Dick was in that class.
Dick was a real athlete.
Yeah, he was a wonderful stone cutter.
And a stone cutter, and of course he went into the Venner Memorials and did all of that for many, many years, and he's gone now, unfortunately. But he had a son, Richard, Jim, who is the owner of Clamco, and then he had a daughter who is your sister-in-law.
That's right.
And they are all musically involved, are they not?
Yes, at Trinity, Dale and Janice sing in the choir.
Yeah,
and Dale plays in the brass quartet that they have.
Mm-hmm. And then who else comes after the
my sister Carolyn, she married Van de Vries.
Van de Vries.
Van de Vries, D-E-V-R-I-E-S.
Mm-hmm.
And they live in Denver, and they have a little girl, Sonia, and she's just completed the 7th grade. And Dale's children are Philip, and he lives in Laurel, Maryland. And Sarah lives in West Palm Beach, Florida. She works for a restaurant. Phil works for Marriott Corporation, contracts food for the Johns Hopkins Hospital. And I think that has changed to something else that I don't know about. And then the third daughter is Mary, and she married Jim Kramer in 1994. And she has 2 children now, one of which is Maura Juliet, is 2 years old, and can't remember his first name.
That's close enough.
Anyhow, those are the 2 great-grandchildren that he has.
You have 2 great-grandchildren, too.
Well, he's got 3 more, but from my sister's oldest daughter, she has 3 girls.
Oh, I see. You have 5
so
great-grandchildren.
he has 5 great-grandchildren and 1 great-grandson.
Right. Now let's go back to, have we gone all the way through the girls?
Siblings, yes,
the siblings,
we have.
that's right.
Yeah.
Now, let's go back to you and talk about your wife. Now, unfortunately, she died a couple of years ago.
Well, we were the same age, born in 1904.
The same
and
day. Tell that story about that I think is so precious about her wanting to be born in the same day that you were.
Or what her mother said.
What her mother said about wanting her to be born the same day.
I don't know what that was.
Well, the story about...
when Faye was born and what the doctor told
Oh,
her.
the doctor, Faye's mother's birthday was in October, so she told the doctor on September 30. She was born in September, and she said, wouldn't you just say she was born October 1st, and then she'd be born the same month birthday. We'd have the same month birthday as I have. And the doctor took the baby and held it up. He said, Mrs. Lance, it's still 3 minutes till 12. So she'll be born on September 30th.
And you were born on September 30th.
Right.
Early in the morning.
1904.
Yeah.
She was born 1904, September 30th. So you're both born the same day. Now, how did you meet this good woman?
There was some doings in Medina County to get young people into Christian educational work, and there was a dentist, George Smith from Medina, that got the idea that we would organize Medina County Council of Religious Education, and they ordered some invited young people of all the denominations, and I happened to be elected president of that organization when it was formed, and it grew. The next year we had a young people's conference in the Methodist Church in Medina. That was in I don't remember the year, 24, 5, 6, where we had a young people that come to a Christian leadership training session. An R.E. Waite from the American Youth Foundation that founded was one of the founders of Camp Minnewanka, spoke to that group, and we met in the Methodist Church in Medina, and we had a little over 100 people.
Wow, from all of Medina County.
From Medina County.
Wow.
That come, and the women of that church in Medina served us a dinner.
You remember what you had?
No, but it was immense what the older people thought and done with our young people group, and I'm still interested.
In young people.
Yes,
Yeah.
Mark Friedley, which is a good friend of ours in the Reformed Church, and
Right.
sings in the choir.
He married Mary Brenneman.
Yeah. He made the remark one time that I was doing something to organize something. I forget what it was, working with a convention or something to get young people to go to conventions. And Mark made the remark to me. He says, "Paul Good, you're past 90 years old and you're still thinking of young people."
That's a real tribute.
That I said, well, I was challenged when I was come out of high school. I was 2 years graduating. I had a broken leg one year, and I had inflammatory rheumatism another, in a one-room grade schoolhouse. But then I made it every year through school. But I failed 2 years in the grades because I was sick. And so she was elected secretary of the girls' group, and they were going to have meetings, so I invited if I'd come and pick her up, and we'd go to the meeting together.
Where was she living at that time?
She was living at Lafayette Township in Lafayette, and her father was a carpenter.
And what was her name?
Faye Irene, and she later...
Faye Irene
Lance.
Lance, right.
She later went to the hospital. What's the name of the Fairview Park Hospital, Cleveland, and took the nurses training and become an RN, registered nurse.
She was an RN then.
Yep. Yeah.
And did she work as a nurse in the hospitals?
Yes, and I could tell you some stories that she was in and happened that was language in it that we wouldn't dare use here to some of the men that employed her.
Oh, is that right?
Yes. She applied in New York. Her and another friend, Catherine Shearer Worley, who was a classmate, and she was from the Reformed Church in New Philadelphia. And she married, and our families got together once a year. We're still friends, and they're all dead now, Catherine and her family. Anyhow, Catherine and Faye traveled from here to California and registered at the place where they, what do you call
Conference?
well, they
Well, they notified the hospitals and
yeah,
what they had for work is what they
They
did.
Oh,
applied
okay.
their agencies.
Agency, okay.
So they went into the town and went to the agency, and they got a job in this town, and they worked their way to California. And then Faye's mother took sick, and so she come back and took care of her. And then she decided that she couldn't get any, she didn't want to work in Cleveland. And so she, I don't know, her and Catherine did I don't know how that went, they traveled. Anyhow, she ended up in New York, in a New York hospital. And so she applied for a job in the emergency room. And so she reported for work, and she worked 3 nights in the emergency room. And then they put her upstairs. And she recommended one of her teachers in nursing as a counselor for this job. Mm-hmm. So the hospital contacted this lady, which was still a maiden lady in Cleveland, and Faye didn't know that her friend was pushing for her, so they put her upstairs, and she worked there 3 nights. So the next morning she went to work, and the man that hired her, he says, "Miss Lance," he says, "what brings you in here?" Well, she says, called him by name. She says, "I want to tell you that nursing is a profession, and a high-class profession." But she says, the emergency room, they come in there and they vomit all over the floor, and we nurses are invited to clean it up. Mm-hmm. And she says, upstairs, they've got newly clean, made up beds. And they go up there drunk, and they make a mess in the bed, and you can guess what the mess was.
Of course.
So she told the man, "I will not work for somebody that has to do that kind of work. There's people that don't have an education and didn't learn how to nurse that do work like that, and I'm going to quit."
And did she?
She resigned right there, and he wrote her a check, and she tore it up and threw it at him.
Oh boy. She's a feisty
So
person.
she says, "You come back tonight at 9 o'clock and we'll have you a job." And the hospital man talked to Faye's advisor that had her in training, was consulted, and Faye was elected the head nurse in the receiving room from the operating room.
Wow.
The head nurse, mm-hmm. with 40-some people under her.
Now, did she continue nursing after you were married?
No. We was 28 when we got married.
28. Where were you married? Here in Wadsworth?
No, that's the story.
Oh, really?
This is on tape, but it would surprise a lot of the people in Wadsworth Church.
Well, let's hear about that.
What I'd done. But he was a young fella that graduated from college and then from seminary, and then he married, and his mother-in-law, then he got married to a young gal, and they had 1 son. I think that's all the children they had. Mm-hmm. But anyhow, his mother-in-law made the remark in Dutch. You want it in Dutch?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Dag, this was a preacher. Galen was his name. Dag, dat babbelt veel te veel.
And what does that translate?
He talks much too much.
He talks too much, too much.
So he and I tangled over an issue which I wouldn't discuss. Mm-hmm. And I was one of the deacons on the consistory and wasn't married, was the youngest consistoryman. They had to get permission from General Synod to have a constituent as young as I was. I was only 20 when I was elected.
I see.
So that was granted. Anyhow, we tangled, and I wouldn't discuss what that was. And so it so happened that his vacation was the same time that we had our wedding date set. So I didn't say anything to him that we was going to get married. And I knew that the head of the Council of Religious Education of the state of Ohio, and I can't think, I tried to think of his name. Anyhow, I knew him well. We had a conference every fall of the whole Ohio state where there was 1,000 young people.
Wow.
I had a railroad car on the Indianapolis-Cleveland Railway that took us down, and we had a carload on the train, 60-some young people that went Saturday and Sunday to a state convention in Greenville, Ohio. So the railroad didn't run through Greenville, but there was a spur, and there wasn't any bus to Greenville. This was in the 20s. So they took our car out of the Cincinnati train and put a steam engine on and took us over to Granville, Ohio. And we went to the convention, and the car was there to take us back. We came back on the train.
And was that your marriage?
No, that was just a trip that we went to a convention together. And that's the way I learned this man that was head of the state
I see.
Young People's Association and an ordained minister and lived in Worcester. So I asked him
To marry you.
to marry us and didn't say anything to anybody.
Anybody else? You got married. And where
And
did,
Tilly Schweitzer was Ed and Tilly were very good friends of our family, and they didn't have any children, and they used to come and see Mother and Dad and us boys when Paul, Merle, and Ford, we all lived on a farm where the Maple Lakes, it's called now, and there's where we made the maple syrup. Well, anyhow, they used to come and visit us, and they didn't have any, the Schweitzers didn't have any children. So one Saturday night, they was there, and I was home. And Tilly just said, she says, Paul, are you ever going to get married? And I told her the exact date, place, time, and everything.
and she didn't believe you.
No, she didn't believe it. We got to Washington, my wife and I. We wrote her a card, just an ordinary government postcard we wrote on the back. Didn't we tell you so, Paul would say. I never lived that down.
No, I would imagine so.
That was a lot of fun.
And what year was that and what day?
That was August 19th, 1930.
1930 you were married.
Yeah.
Now, let's get back to some of the things that you remember about early Wadsworth. Since you're 94 years old, you remember a lot about early Wadsworth, I would imagine.
Well, Uncle Will done something that was really great after the First World War.
That'd be 1918.
Yes, he organized one of the greatest things that ever happened in Wadsworth.
And what was that?
He got the idea that you could have a community sale and invite people to donate a rocking chair, furniture, produce, chickens, rabbits, things to sell to a community. And he had a group of people, clerks, that checked in all the articles, and then they had a sale. And that was out here where on a farm, and the barn and the house empty, and he rented that.
And where was that?
That was where Ringer's Locker stands out here
West of town.
on College Street on the south side.
Right. And the Ringer's Locker's no longer there.
No.
But so that we can tell where this is, it would
It
be
was the old Swan Farm.
Swan. About
And later, that was in 1918, and that lasted till, I don't know, 35 or 40.
And that would be the location would be where Isham School is right now, about a quarter of a mile west and on the south side of the road.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that was
right
the
beside-
Swain Farm.
Yeah, just-
Later, he added that they sold livestock and they had veal calves and they had cows that wasn't paying their way at the bottom in a herd, and the farmer decided to sell them. Well, we'll take her to community sale. Whatever she brings, that's it. So you had the buyer was the judge, and beware. An L.H. Renner was an old-fashioned cattle buyer with a white beard, an old man, and he bought a
You remember what LH stood for? Renner.
Lewis H. Renner.
Lewis H. Renner.
Lived at Young's Corners, right north of Sharon Center.
Okay.
And so he and Monroe Lynn, that was
Monroe Lynn lived on the south side of Wadsworth.
yeah, and he belonged to the New Order of Mennonite people, the ones that are up the hill. What do they call that church? Bethel Mennonite.
On Seville.
The difference between the old order and Bethel was that the women would dare wear a hat to Bethel, but the old order Mennonite church, they had to wear a bonnet or something. This will cause discussion among among the old order Mennonite people that are living now that'll hear this broadcast, and some of the young people. But they were an order that still stands, and they're good people. You don't hear any of them tangled up in
Well, all of the drugs and things like that.
yeah,
They're hardworking farmers.
yeah,
And good people all the way through.
good people.
Very good.
And they still have churches. One of my cousins of Irie Good, that was Uncle Ephraim's, one of the oldest boys, just died. And he was he was a bricklayer. I carried him 1,000 brick on a house roof to lay a chimney in one day,
Wow, that's a lot of brick.
and mixed the mortar and carried it to him.
That's a lot of brick.
Yeah.
Talking about the goods that are out in the Mennonite community, there are right now the Good girls who are Beulah Good, Pauline Good, Esther Good. Who was their father, and how was he related to you?
Abraham
Good, that's
He
right.
was born in 1891, I think, and he was my father's youngest brother.
Abraham Good was your father's youngest brother.
Yeah, and
they-
he and Elsie Eberly were married in 1916, and they had the 5 girls:
5 girls,
Mabel, Mary, Esther,
Pauline and Beulah.
Pauline, and Beulah.
Right, and they're still out there, and they belong to the Mennonite church, which is on the south side of Mennonite Road, which I think Maple Valley,
Maple Hill.
Maple Hill,
Maple Hill on the southeast
which is the
corner.
older Mennonite church, is that right? The older
I think so. I guess the Whistlers come from, that was up on Guilford Road in Guilford Township.
Where the Guilford-
That was a Whistler Mennonite. That was a brand of Whistlers, or a family of Whistlers that come from Pennsylvania.
Right.
Sometime
Now,
later.
Then Beulah Good is your cousin,
Right.
Right,
and your second cousin then, Lucy, right?
right.
And Esther and Pauline and the rest of them are all
Uncle
your...
Will and his wife didn't have any girls. And Uncle Abe and his wife Elsie didn't have any boys.
That's right.
And Uncle Bill, they had 3 or 4 boys that lived, and 2 or 3 that are dead. And Uncle Abe, they had 5 girls.
And you remember all of these uncles and...
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
They're all dead now.
Now, you had talked about something which we really need to get to, and that is Milo Lind.
Monroe Lynn.
Monroe Lind, I'm sorry, Monroe Lind. And Bill Good had this community sale.
No, Bill had the sale, but Lou Renner and Monroe Lynn were the cattle
Oh, they were the cattle people.
They were
Okay.
the cattle dealers.
Right, okay.
Traded cows and had cows, fresh cows to sell, and you know what
Now, a
all.
fresh cow to kids this day doesn't mean much, but a fresh cow is one that has just given birth.
Right.
Right. Now, tell us about this community sale. This is the first time it's ever come up. Tell us about the community sale west of town.
Well, they sold everything.
But did they do it on a regular basis every year?
Yeah, the first Monday of every month.
And how long that lasts, from 1918 to 35, you say?
35 or 40.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
don't think 40. I would have remembered 40, but I barely remember the community sale. That would have been 1935, perhaps, but I could be wrong. Now, one of the nice things about this program, Mr. Good, is that if we make a mistake, somebody will call us up on the telephone and tell us. So if I make any mistakes, they always tell me about them.
After the show.
After the show, that's right, that's right.
You get lots of calls.
Oh, yes, I make a lot of mistakes, or we
And
make a
I
lot
know
of
one
mistakes.
call that you'll get.
Would that be?
That would be what Paul Good's worth.
Oh, is that right? Well, that
And I like that there was two men written up in a church paper one time, and one man had a big long list of all the things that he owned that would be in his will and estate, and it would be a huge estate, that would contain land and buildings and cattle and on and on and on and on.
Mm-hmm.
That was listed what would be in his will at his funeral. The other man had a list of all the things that he and his wife and family done, that they sent this young fellow to college and then to seminary, and he become a minister, and another boy went to animal husbandry and become maybe a Holstein breeder, and he might be one of the boys that today would have a heifer that was due to freshen with her first calf, that her mother had maybe produced 30,000 pounds of milk.
Wow.
And those fellas are in the breeding, and the 4-H clubs have calf clubs, and they have beef steers that they buy, and then they have an auction and sell the steers. Our son bought a calf. I can't tell you the story, but it was from Ed Barr's, and Ed Barr's was
Ed Barr was on the corner of
Lake
Lake
Road, out near
Lake
Chip
Road
Falls.
and 162.
That's right, right. North of
Dale,
Chip
our only son, bought a day-old heifer calf from Ed Barr's.
Bowers, B-O-W-E-R-S. We have to spell all of these because people may not know from,
Yeah.
down the
Well,
road.
Ed's dead now.
Ed is dead. His
Ed
son lives
moved
there.
out from Cleveland and built a golf course, and then built this sale business. Anyhow, Dale bought a day-old calf, heifer, pedigreed calf, and I think he paid $1,000 for it, for a 4-H club project. And I don't remember just how that story went. But did that calf die, or how did
Do you
that
remember,
go?
Lucy?
No, I don't.
You don't remember that?
Anyhow, one of the daughters of that calf, then we sold when Dale was ready to go to college. We had a bunch of Holstein heifers that we put together that had their first calf.
Mm-hmm.
And we sold this mother to this, or the daughter of this heifer calf that he bought from Ed Barr's. And it brought a real good price.
Wonderful.
What they're doing now, the young people have the advantage of going out of the 4-H club to a good cattle breeder, all breeds, and some of the breeds, forget what they call them, crosses. But they have the chance, if they want to, they can maybe find a heifer calf out of a cow that produced 30,000 pounds of milk. And there's a group of farmers in Michigan, or in Wisconsin, that have a 30,000 pound club that have a cow or two in their herd of maybe, what, 100 to 400 cows.
Wow. Mm-hmm.
We have neighbors here, the Rupp family, and there's other families where they have 800-900 cows right here at Sterling, Ohio.
Mm-hmm.
But they have those good calves that they can get for each club from the breeder that bred them, a bull calf,
Mm-hmm.
for their own father's herd or something like that. And there's new candidates in Wisconsin for the 30,000 pound milk cow club every year.
Every year.
Every year.
Mr. Good, we're going to run out of time pretty soon, but I want to hear about your popcorn stand.
Well, when my wife and I moved, first of all, I carried her upstairs at the farm on a black walnut staircase that was built in 1820.
You when you were married?
No,
Oh.
this was later in life. And so then Mark Friedley rented us an apartment in Wadsworth where it would be all on one floor, and we rented the land, the farmhouse, the two-story house anyhow. Faye, one morning in the apartment, fried 2 eggs in a little steel skillet that wouldn't have weighed a pound. And she happened to drop them on the floor. And she says, oh, man, now, and I said, Faye, sit down, I'll clean it up and fry 2 more. And she just said, I wonder what Chapel Hill would have to offer. I said, well, let's call them. And so we called them, and the fellows invited us down for dinner.
Mm-hmm.
This was right after breakfast, maybe a little after 6 o'clock in the morning. I had 300-400 head of calves or cattle out on Bear Swamp Road that I had to go out there and feed, so we could be in
Canal Fulton.
Canal Fulton. We could be at Canal Fulton at the home for dinner, and we went down there. That was after January 1st, and we moved to Chapel Hill July 1st, 1974.
Mm-hmm.
And then September 30, we were 70. And we told our parents that we was going to move, or told our kids,
you
mother and
moved down
dad
there.
were gone. We told our children we was going to move to a nursing home. And one of the girls with her said, my goodness, they decided on their own to go. Usually a family quarrels 10 years
That's
before
right.
they can get the old man and the old woman to decide to go and get help for themselves.
And how did you get involved then with the popcorn stand, which you became?
Well, I had to have something to do.
So what did you do?
Well, the first day I was there, I walked around the campus, and there was 30-some maple trees on the place. And I walked downtown and around the schoolhouse and around the playground. There was 14 maples in the town. Around the fenced-in playground, there was 14 big maples. So I decided to make a sugar camp there,
Mm-hmm.
and boil maple syrup. And I tapped them trees, and they wouldn't let me tap the trees on the street because the buckets would fly off and get in the traffic.
Mm-hmm.
I said, I'll use bags with a grim smile. But he says, we won't give you the permission to tap them in the park because we don't think that's necessary.
Mm-hmm.
But one fellow says, we don't really have the right because the Board of Education owns it,
Right.
owns the trees. I said, oh, thank you. So I went to the Board of Education and told them what I wanted. So I set up a sugar camp with a 4x6 pan, laid it up with brick and clay mud, cut wood in the woods down there and hauled woods from dead trees in the neighborhood.
And you boiled
Maple syrup,
right.
and they served maple syrup on the first ice cream that was served with maple syrup at Chapel Hill. And there was many old people that never tasted
And you did it.
ice cream with maple syrup.
Mr.
So I thought they wanted something for a meeting and they'd have to have popcorn. And we went to buy some and they didn't have kernels that didn't pop sorted out. And we'd done that once and I said, there's another way of doing this. And I went to the administrator, Bob Hegnar, and we talked about it. And Sophie and I went to a popcorn dealership that handles popcorn and machines, and we bought a big popper that,
Popcorn.
yeah, you can, that'll,
And you went around to a lot of
that'll
places.
pop about a pound to a batch, and you could pop 300 bags in an hour.
An hour. We have come to the end of the hour, unfortunately. We have so much more to talk about, but we wanted to tell you how much we appreciated the fact that you would give this part of your history to Wadsworth for Wadsworth History on Film. Thank you very, very much, and thank you, Lucy. You've been very helpful. Thank you.
You're welcome.